Hello and welcome to Next 2.0 on WQLN PBS NPR. Next is produced by the Public's Voice Media. I am your host, Marcus Atkinson. If you want to know more about Next, you can go to Next 2.0 and you can go to our Facebook page. Like the page if you will. You can also follow us on Instagram at Next 2.0 Erie. There you can keep up with upcoming show promos, events, and clips about what's next for our communities and our democracy. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today is a special occasion. We have a speaker with us today that has a very storied history, athletically and now socially. He's choosing to make an impact. We have Mr. Vernon Maxwell with us. Vernon, welcome to the show. Vernon is going to talk a little bit about mental health awareness, and we'll talk about his background in the NBA as well. And then we also have Dr. Melanie Hetzel-Riggin. Hetzel-Riggin, I'm saying that correct. Dr. Melanie, welcome to the show. And Dr. Melanie is with Penn State Behrend. If you want to give your title.
Sure. I'm a professor of clinical psychology and director of the School of Humanities and Social Sciences. I also am the co-chair of the Erie Coalition for a Trauma-Informed Community.
Got it. So this is an opportunity for us to spread awareness. We're mindful of the fact that July is National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. And this is timely because although it is not July just yet per se, this is a conversation we want to carry over into July. So let me get on my soapbox real quick before we get started. One of the reasons that I'm so excited about Vernon's message is because I wonder out loud, it's kind of a rhetorical thought, how many of our young men would still be alive or not incarcerated if they had identified some sort of mental health issues or had sought help in some way, shape, or fashion for their emotional well-being, even if they didn't have mental health issues per se in particular, but just dealing with their emotions. My friend and business partner, Matt Harris, has his own program, Care to Be About It. He's got these 12 different principles that he talks about, and one of those is self-regulation. And I'm big on that because having been an advocate and a youth development specialist for 30 plus years, I've worked with a lot of young people over the years. And unfortunately, I've seen a lot of horror stories, things going the direction that you don't want it to go in. I've seen the kids go to jail. I still get the letters. I've gone to the funerals for kids that have been buried. And one of the biggest issues, if not the issue with these young people, has been with our young men in particular, being able to regulate their emotions. I watched a celebrity judge online one time, and she was talking to young black men in jail, and she was going in on these young brothers. And this was the crux of her conversation. She said, how many of you are here simply because you cannot regulate your emotions and someone's dead because somebody disrespected you, or you're locked up because you didn't like the way somebody looked at you? And there's a whole industry that is being built around the fact that you cannot control your emotions. Do you not see that? And it was a very passionate conversation and a very passionate speech. And again, at the risk of being redundant, I understand that not all of these situations are mental health related, but I do know that whether it's mental health or not, there's some emotions that need to be detangled. And so I gave you that big lead in to say, one, we are so very excited and grateful that Vernon is utilizing his story the way he's utilizing it. And you'll hear all of the details to it in just a second, because I happen to believe that every young black male athlete, especially in this country, needs this conversation, and they don't get it until it's too late, right? And so with that being said, I want to toss it off to you, Vernon. Give us a little bit about your background for the people that may know the name Vernon Maxwell. Is it the same Vernon Maxwell who won 2 national championships or 2 NBA championships with the Houston Rockets? Yeah, it's the same Vernon Maxwell. This is him. Vernon, tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, Vernon Maxwell from Gainesville, Florida. Came up rough on me when I came up. No father, no guidance. Looking for some direction, couldn't find it. And just was out of control as a kid. Just way out of control as a kid. And my uncle saved my life. To make a quick story of it. But I struggle all the time, every day with my mental, people I can talk to, I have, and that's a good thing for me. That, it put me in a good place that I can call somebody and talk to them about the way I feel, and if I feel this certain kind of way, and my anxiety, like, oh my goodness, I'm thinking about this plane flight all day.
So that gives you anxiety to think about getting on that plane.
Oh man, it's so hard for me to fly. Man, it's so hard for me to fly. So and that's another problem I have with my anxiety. Is my partner Cam, we be on the plane together. I know I'll be like, poor Cam, I just played through so much on that plane. I'd be like, man, get up. Man, I can't sit here. Man, you gotta go tell these people something, man, because I'm finna open this door. I'm finna go off, man. And it's just be a whole mess. So, but I have some meds that I can take, to help me with that problem. But it's hard for me to take them though, because like we was talking today, and I was telling the guys that if I'm on an hour and a half flight, I can't take the meds because it had me all woozy the whole day. I'm just all out of whack. I just can't come. I'm just drugged up. And so now then I have to learn how to take little pieces and bites off it, So now that's what I do. I can get on the plane, but still I don't think I'm taking enough because I'm going crazy on these planes.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me to fly. It's the worst thing ever. All my wind getting sucked out of my lungs.
That anxiety starts to take over.
I feel, what I'm gonna do, man? Y'all gonna open this door, let me off this plane, and can't sit by the window. Gotta sit in the aisle seat. It's just a lot going on with me. But back to my story. But when I came up, I was just a bad kid, out of control, just way out of control.
Now, hold on. Can I do a follow-up question on that, Vernon, as you're unpacking your story? Because I heard you talking about this earlier. When you were an out-of-control kid, how much of that was at home versus at school? Was it as out of control at school as at home, or what was that like?
Well, my mom was working 3 jobs, and she had us by herself, so she really couldn't be there a lot at home. So it was kind of like both. I ran the streets, and I was a fool in school, So, and I had to. My uncle came on, and and disciplined me a little bit, and went on, and like I said, I never did get any help. They were telling me in elementary school, oh, this kid, he needs some help to control his emotions, because I just go crazy. Somebody say anything to me out of the ordinary, say anything about my mama, I just go crazy, and then all out of whack. I probably was suspended in elementary probably over 200 days out of a whole year, calendar year. And I got held back in the 5th grade because of the time that I missed in school for being suspended for acting a fool. And then it carried on because I never did get any help. My mom didn't, I guess she didn't have time to even think about, oh, this guy, I got to put him in a program, so, but nah, she never did. Well, I love my mom to death. She did as best she could for all of us, So, but I don't hold nothing against her, I ain't mad or nothing. But I now that I know what I know, I needed a lot of help.
You needed something.
Yes.
Let me bring Dr. Melanie into this conversation because, one, when I listen to this story, I think about people automatically going to ADD, right? ADHD, and there's been one narrative that says young black boys especially are overly diagnosed when it comes to things like this. On the flip side, there is a need component to this. And so kind of separate the two for us. Where's that line at?
Sure. So ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, is one possibility. And there are differences in diagnosis of ADHD, particularly men more than women, and then also you tend to see higher rates of diagnosis, but also misdiagnosis sometimes in African American and Hispanic youth. But the impact of trauma, particularly in kids, oftentimes mimics exactly what ADHD looks like. And particularly if you're in a school district or a community where there's not as much resources or time to screen appropriately to determine, is this due to trauma or is this due to some sort of attention deficit issue, the treatment is usually ADHD, or the idea is it's going to be HD, that's behavioral interventions and medication, which, while helpful, isn't necessarily going to get to the root of the problem, which is oftentimes, as you've been describing in your own life, is there's chaotic family life and really great intention on a parent, but just not a whole lot of time and resources. And then usually school districts that are just not equipped to have the right spaces to work early in intervention with kids who might not have really great or underdeveloped regulation skills, emotion regulation, behavioral regulation skills. And so you get exactly what you're talking about, lots of discipline issues, suspensions, where there's never an intention to take a break and be like, maybe this person or this kid or these groups of kids need some intentional, intensive work early on when you're a little kid, 6, 7, 8, about really simple emotion regulation, behavior regulation, cognitive regulation skills, which would prevent sort of the steamrolling that happens later on. We know more now, but it's still trying to find the resources to be able to provide that in school districts and in communities is still, I think we're not quite there yet.
I hit 3 things in Vernon's story, and then we're going to throw it back to you, Vernon. I hit 3 things in Vernon's story to jump out to me. One, I also heard you mention earlier that you didn't know your father. Feels like trauma to me, right? You mentioned poverty several times. Trauma, right? And then you have a mom who, because she's working a lot of jobs, she's trying to provide, the normal attention that a child would get from a mother isn't there. Trauma, right? And so when I listen to some of these clinical definitions and some of these things that lend itself to these type of behaviors, in a lot of ways it just feels textbook, right? Which is why I think this story is so important. So you were taking it from the elementary school, you got all of these traumas working, you don't identify it as such, you just know I'm hell on wheels, as you put it, right? And then you move into junior high, these behaviors continue, I take it?
Yes, yeah.
Talk about that.
Well, see, and then you got to say, back then now, in them days now, I was in elementary school now, I was in the 70s now. Early 70s, so I don't think this stuff was even being mentioned.
Right.
Mental health wasn't being mentioned or talked about back then. I mean, it was just like, I think, like, at my elementary school, I was like, nobody had no issue. Nobody came to me and say, oh man, we got to put you in this program to try to get you some help. Yeah. Nah, they just continued to say, okay, we're going to suspend his ass for another week. Get on out of here, and then, okay, we're gonna give him 10 days, go on, get on out of here. Right. And they was just, and I would just sit home, just do nothing, and just get myself in something I was supposed to get into. And then I went on to my junior high, like you said, steamroller, just turning over. I was hell on wheels in junior high, but then I started thinking, and people started saying, and I was watching TV, and I was like, man, I want to be like those guys when playing this basketball. I want to play in the NBA one day. And then, so people started telling me, okay, now you got to change your ways, you got to be a better kid. You got to stop doing what you're doing, those extracurriculum off the floor. You just got to change your life a whole lot, because they're going to go back to when you were in elementary school and talk to those teachers about, hey, what kind of person is this kid? Is he a good kid or what? He was hell on wheels.
I was about to say, they'll come back with the hell on wheels report. So Vernon, we don't feel good about this hell on wheels report. It's not what we were looking for.
That's what it would have been. So, and then it just kept going. And then I was thinking, I was like, well, I got to do better. And I started doing a little bit better, because I was going to high school. I had all these high schools recruiting me because I played football, basketball, and baseball. And I ran track. So, but I had all these schools after me, interested in me, and then a couple of them fell off me because they found out about my background, like the private schools, little white private schools and stuff. They left me alone because of my background, what I had did early on in my life. And but I felt like I went to the right school because I had a decent high school as far as my attitude, because I knew where I was trying to do and I knew where I was trying to go. So I was more mindful of not getting suspended and trying to do the right thing as far as in the school parameters, like just be a good kid but I got better just because I knew what I wanted to do and I knew where I was trying to go. And then, so I had a great high school career and had some slip-ups, and like I'm going to do that.
I'm going to back you up before you get to that part, because you said something significant. When you said back in the 70s, people weren't talking about this from a clinical perspective. When was awareness starting to spread in common communities about these type things versus, oh, this kid is just, he's acting up, he or she has an attitude problem? Now we have the mental awareness conversation. When did that become prevalent?
Yeah, it hasn't been, I mean, really the major conversations about the impact of trauma and dysregulation, and particularly in kids, didn't really make it to the common sort of conversation outside of the clinical circles till probably about 15-ish years ago. And even then, it was still very subsets, right? You'd see, it really was after 9/11 is when you started to see more conversations, because we had sort of a national event, and all of a sudden people started talking about the impact of this large thing. And so after that, you started to see a little bit more conversations about particularly the kids in New York City who were impacted. And then this looks a lot like the ACEs study, which came out about the same time and really became popular, and the impacts of that. ACEs are adverse childhood events, and how they impact a whole host of things, not only emotional problems, but cardiovascular issues and impact of cancer and lower life expectancy. And so, early 2000s, and then really in the last, say, 10 years, and then totally, because of COVID, now it's in every conversation, is really seeing, if you look at not all, but a large proportion of dysregulated kids or things where you're seeing huge barriers, it's because of either individual trauma, community trauma, or even institutional systematic trauma, and how this has affected not only individuals, but family generations or communities as a whole. And we're really starting now to take the research we know about how to intervene, how to prevent, how to minimize the impact, and trying to make it a little bit more globally available. But really, truly, 15 years ago was the first time the conversations were coming out of the psychological space.
And let's take the extra step of, even when it became a community conversation, Black folk wasn't talking about it.
We were too scared. We were too scared, too proud. Like for me, for instance, I wasn't gonna. If somebody would have told me, man, you need help, I'd have tell them, man, F you.
Right.
Man,
it feels like an insult.
You think you're talking to?
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'd have been like. So people, I think a lot of times with me, people are just scared to like come at me and be like, oh man, you need help, man, because they scared with, oh man, I don't know what this crazy motherfucker. So I can't even go and just say, man, hey, can I talk to you about something? Yeah. And then everybody was too scared to come and tell me that, boy, you borderline crazy. Yeah. You need some help. You need somebody to talk to about your issues that but back to my story, I went college, high school, had a great high school career, but still, like I said, stumbled a little bit, and I wasn't steamrolling as much as I was back in junior high and elementary, and Mr. Basketball in the state of Florida, #1 player in the state. Went on to the University of Florida, had over 400 schools offer me scholarships when I was coming out of high school all over the nation. So ended up going to the University of Florida. I stayed home. Probably, I don't know if it was a curse or was it a blessing, because, I just knew where to go to get all the dope, and I knew where to go. Yeah. Curse, right? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I was happy I was home with, my family can see me play at my mom's, and I was happy about that part. But I don't know if I might have should have left and went to another state and went to school, where then I wouldn't have had access to all this stuff that and because I had all the dope, I had all the, I just know where to go get it from, and everybody was just giving it to me, and I knew where to just do everything. So I think I should have maybe left, because when I got in college, man, after your third failed drug test, you're supposed to be kicked out of the University of Florida. Shit, I failed about 100 drug tests in the first year, and so all they were doing too was putting a bandage on my wound and pushing me through too. So, and I found out that, you know, later I was like, oh, damn, why they ain't help me? Why they ain't help me? You know, so, but I ended up having a great college career, all-time leading scorer at the University of Florida still today. But still, I was still rolling, getting into things. And like, for instance, I was telling the guys earlier today, I was at the Combine out in Orlando, Florida. It's right before the draft. And they had me projected in the top 10, going to the top 10 of the draft. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'm finna get my dream. It's finna happen, boy. This shit finna happen for old Max. Finally finna get some good luck in the Maxwell family. So we was staying in the hotel, we was working out. I was having a good combine. I was shooting it well. I was quick, I was fast. I did all the agility drills well. I was moving up to in the charts of the draft. So, but then one morning I woke up, and that's what I was telling y'all about today. I woke up, and back then, you know, we didn't have phones like this, you know, where you can pick up the phone and just read everything on the phone and get a newspaper. You read a newspaper. You open your door at the hotel, it's a newspaper. USA Today is right there at your door. You pick it up, and that's where we used to get our news from, not off the phone. And I opened up the paper, I was like, well, damn, let me look and see what they're saying about old Max today. And goddamn, my picture, big old picture of me just sitting right there. Vernon Maxwell get marijuana, cocaine, you know, drunk, and just all these things just came out about me a week before the draft. I'm like, wow, now that crushed me. Now I was really was on the borderline of like doing something. That's one time I thought about doing something with myself, you know, because I was upset because I felt like I had worked hard to get to where I got, and then somebody leaked that out on me, you know, from the University of Florida, and I didn't think that was right, but I had so much emotion. I could have killed, you know, I was just so upset. And so, make a long story short, I went from being top 10 in the draft, anywhere before the top 10 pick, to the second to the last pick. Still, this stuff still following me ever since.
So your past behaviors were weaponized against you, and somebody saw fit to, you know what, I'm gonna put this information out, and it's probably gonna hurt his draft. And obviously it did, which goes back to what you said earlier. They reached back to elementary school. What kind of person was this person, right? Yes. But the schools are gambling on you because they want the athletic prowess. We heard the reports. You know, we read the Hell on Wheels report. We didn't like it, but this dude can play, right? And so we're gonna push him through, which hurt more than it helped. So you read the USA Today, you are steaming.
Yes, right? yes, because I felt like I did so much for the University of Florida. They had never went to the NCAA tournament. I was the first one that took them there. I mean, they hadn't won 20 games in a season. I was the first one that did that with them. I mean, so, and I just felt like I knew where it came from, and because he told me and my mom, you know, sitting there, he told us, hey, if it's up to me, he's not going to play in the NBA. Yeah, that was my head coach at the University of Florida. God bless him, Norm Sloan. But yeah, he said that. So, and that's when my mom, she broke down. She was crying. You know, I was like, yo, what the hell? I was like, what the hell is, man? What kind of person is you? Yeah, I mean, what are you, man? My mama, man, you know, now I'm...
Hold on, let me understand. Did he think it was going to be harmful to you, or what was that about?
Well, I think it was a threat to let me know and let my mom know he's gonna leak something out. He's gonna tell, like he said, if it's up to him, he told my mom, if it's up to him, he's not gonna play in the NBA because I'm gonna let him know about all this stuff, all this cocaine and all this marijuana and all this drinking and all this shit he's doing. So, and he told my mom that right in front of me and her. I was like, my mom broke down crying. I was like, man, what are you doing, man? I just played 4 years. I could have left when I was a junior and went to the NBA, but I decided, my mom said, baby, we want you to stay where you can get your degree. And I did it for my mom because my mom said stay for the 4th year. And then as soon as it was, you know, like, and when you're gonna go to the draft, if I was gonna leave early my junior year, which I should have did, it got to a point, they got a cutoff line where you gotta say, I'm gonna do it or I'm not. Yeah. So it got to, I was gonna do it. I told my mom, I'm sorry, Mom, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna follow my dream. And then, so she talked to me about it. I was like, okay, then I didn't do it. And then, as soon as the cutoff line came, where you had to, he knew I was gonna have to be at the University of Florida for that last year. Oh my goodness, man, that man was the devil. Oh my goodness, he was hell on wheels. Yeah. I mean, he treated me like some shit. My last year, man, it was crazy the way this man. I mean, it's the things that I couldn't. I mean, I went through so much, man, at my last year in that school, and I was supposed to enjoy my last year at college. Man, that was the worst year of my life.
Feel like there was a lot of resentment for the fact that you got away with a lot over those 3 years. You know, before we pivot back to your story, I mean, I feel like some of what I'm hearing is extremely common, because you got a lot of kids that go to great schools. Now, it's very rare to take the next step and go to the NBA like you did. That's the part where a minute few. But you got a handful of kids, Division 1, 2, or 3, that go and play college ball. The way this plays out in the African American community, what made you interested in how mental health and the African American community or the BIPOC community collides in the first place, before we finish unpacking Vernon's story?
So, I mean, I don't know. It's fascinating listening to your experience, because it's you hear this so frequently about, one thing that keeps coming to my mind is, athletics is one of the big ways that a lot of African American kids are thinking about moving out of whatever area they're at, and just hearing this constant sort of re-traumatization. I'm hearing that so frequently, particularly with not only what happened with the paper, but also just how your coach treated you in that last year, that as soon as you've got some sort of hope for the future, people aren't really supporting you actually getting help that you might need to actually become a better player, if that's even possible. And then I don't know.
So the trauma is being layered from what
it's just layered and layered and layered and layered, which only exacerbates the symptoms, which likely, increases substance use, increases anxiety, increases depression, all of these things. And it's just, what you've been talking about keeps me back to the work of Dr. Bruce Perry, who really talks about, the impact of trauma and collective trauma on our physiology, and how to address that is really, there's sort of 3 steps. First, regulate, and then relate, and then reason. And it sounds like both the regulate, whether it's emotion regulation, physiological regulation, cognitive behavioral, wasn't happening, but also the relate piece, right? Relate is developing that once someone is a little bit regulated, is the connection with your peers, with your coach, with whoever, and that is also really just as important as learning regulation. And it sounds for you, as is a story for a lot of people, neither of those were really well done, which just exacerbates the impact of trauma.
Yeah, and here's this kid that's a phenomenal athlete, and the way, by and large, the way that you go about dealing with some of these, what you perceive as behavior issues, the way you deal with it is unfair to him. Mm-hmm. And what I love and what I'm hearing is now, in retrospect, you are holding the village accountable. Mm-hmm. You all wanted my athletic ability. Mm-hmm. You got a piece of it. Houston benefited from it. Florida benefited from it. But I had some stuff that needed to be addressed. And here you are years later saying, okay, the village, we need to have a conversation. Because young Vernon Max needed more than just rack up another 40 points for us, right? And so this is where it spurs a conversation from a different angle, because I believe that this is the voice that the village is forced to hear, because right now they're doing it to the new young Vernon Maxwells. And they don't want the Vernon Maxwell to say, address be fair to him, address his issues, And we get to the NBA part of it. I know for the listener, he was saying that people were scared to tell him, Vernon, this might be a problem. This the same Vernon Maxwell that went into the audience of the NBA game and smacked the fan. So you got people around him like, I ain't telling him this is... So, but you're holding the village accountable, and so this is good. But so you do get drafted, and that's where you were leaving off. Yeah. Your draft status plummets, and you lose roughly how much?
I went from being in the top 10 to second to the last pick in the draft, and from making I guess maybe $2 million a year to making $300,000.
For a family that desperately needed
Right.
this injection of capital into the family income.
Of course, right. So it killed my draft status. But I knew all I need to do is get it in the door in the NBA, and I knew if somebody drafted me, I knew everybody knew I was top 10. I just was a crazy person, I guess. I so to say, all the things that I was getting into and all the things that I had did, self-inflicted wounds to myself. You know, so, but I knew all I needed a chance, and Popovich and them gave me a chance, and I got drafted. I got drafted by the San Antonio Spurs. Yep, and once again, hell on wheels. First year in the NBA, here I go again. Out partying. You know, shouldn't even be out like that. You know, professional athletes, I don't think they should be out, and I don't think you should isolate yourself from being out around people when you're a professional athlete. But I think you got to be mindful of some of the places that you go to. You know, because a lot of people ain't really liking you like you think they do. A lot of people really jealous of what you're doing, and you know, and so, and you have to be real mindful of that. But then, like I say, back in the day, like I was talking with some guys last night where we were at, and I was telling them, like, I think it might have been you all, but I was saying that back in the day, see, they didn't have like security guards for us. Right. Like I wouldn't have been able to run up in the stands and smack the fan if I'd have had my personal security guard like they NBA have these guys lined up with now in the NBA. LeBron got his own personal. All these guys, even the last guy on the bench, he got a security guard with him. When he goes out to the mall, when he goes out to eat, it's everyday life. This man be with them. And that's what we was lacking. They didn't have that for us and that would have saved me a whole lot of money, because I lost a lot of money. I mean, when I went up in the stands, for instance, and smacked that guy, that was a 10-game suspension. I lost $800 and something thousand. You know, I mean, yeah. So yeah, I feel Lord. I wish but I don't know what I was thinking about. But yeah, but that's something that, you know, I mean, that's once again my mental. You know, I mean, I'm supposed to be tuned in the game, and I'm back here listening to this guy talk about my stillborn daughter. You know, so you know, and that's what stemmed it. Yeah. You know, this guy was up there talking about my stillborn daughter. So I was telling the security guard, man, you better go handle this. Go tell this guy to watch out what he's saying. He's talking about my stillborn daughter. I don't even know how he know. You know, my daughter just passed away. We buried my daughter about 2 weeks before that. So I take a week off, you know, just from playing. Because I was like, oh, Lord, I can't do it. Oh, man, my baby gone. I can't do it. And I take a week off. And then I said, my wife was telling me, nah, baby, just go back and play, because do what you love to do. Keep your mind off of this, because you're going crazy in here. So I went back to play, which I probably shouldn't have went back to play that early. And yeah, I probably shouldn't have did it. And I did it just because I wanted to get my mind off of this. But with this tragedy that just happened in my life. And so I went back and played, and that's why I smacked that guy, you know, and in the stand I lost that $850,000 and suspended. And then after that, here we go, rolling again. They brings Clyde Drexler in when I got suspended for the 10 games, and they did all this behind my back. And Houston, I felt like they owed me the world. You know, I mean, I just knew they owed me the world. And so they during my suspension, they didn't even call me and check on me or nothing. I was like, well, this is weird. I said, why? They ain't calling me and checking on me and saying, Vernon, you need to get in the gym and work out with somebody, or are you working out on the weights? They ain't call me and say nothing the whole 10 games I was out. I was like, that was strange. And then in the same instant, they was recruiting, trying to get Clyde to come over, Dream and that 5 Slammer Jammer Bull stuff. You know, they wanted to get them back together, and then when I come back, it's get real bad. Now, they barely even playing me. And I felt like they owed me the world, because what I just done for the year before. you know, when we won the first championship. If I don't do what I do in Game 3, I mean, it ain't no championship in Houston. It's not. It's no championship there. I don't care what nobody say. If I don't do what I do in Game 3, we can't go down 3-0.
You gave me some information I didn't know earlier. Your daughter being born, stillborn. Didn't know that. Yeah. Didn't know that that's what spurred that outburst with the fan. At the risk of being redundant, Doctor, layered trauma.
Most likely you were in the middle of grief, right? Grief doesn't end in a week, and given everything else, of course you're going to be a little bit more sensitive, even more. I don't know. It's just from an outside perspective, anyone who could have been paying attention could see all of these pieces. And I've heard at least 12 different times where someone could have intervened, a teacher, your coach, someone on the coaching staff in your team. There's a whole bunch of places where people could have intervened and just, hey, do you need to talk? Even if it's not like professional talking, like, hey, do you want to grab a cup of coffee? Do you want to go work out together or something? And no, that's, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you have these slogans, it's okay to not be okay. And once again, you weren't okay. Right. But it goes back to the idea or the fact that this wasn't for these things to not be addressed are not fair to you and your mental health, development and wellness and things along those lines. So you get the 10-game suspension. They start to try to restructure some things. Is that their way of trying to push you out?
Right. Yeah, they brought Clyde Drexler in and didn't tell me about it. Then I found out about on the news that Clyde was getting traded to Houston. Then I get back to come back to the team, and it was so weird. It was like I was playing with a whole different team. They wouldn't. Rudy T stopped playing me. I was like, what? I don't understand what's going on. I used to bust this dude ass, Clyde Drexler. And how you gonna come in here and you just gonna give him my job? But I understand those, like you talk about, those layers. They got tired of it. They got tired of it. They want to have somebody that they can trust and know he's gonna be there, all the time. They ain't want a guy who somebody say something, you just flip off and just go off and bust somebody upside the head. Mm-hmm. They got tired of it because that was just one incident I'm talking about. Right. It was a whole lot more before that, so they was just tired. And so they got rid of me basically, so they just didn't bring me back. And then I went back to San Antonio. They wanted me again. Popovich, brought me back and I played with them. And then, I was pretty much smooth after that because up until I got to Seattle. And then get up to Seattle, Gary Payton, big mouth, trash talker, can't fight. Yeah. Oh man, that's a whole nother story.
I bet.
Yeah, the mitt. Tony Glove. Well, I get up to Seattle and I always take the young guys up under my wing. I was a veteran. I had just signed a 3-year, $9 million deal, and the biggest deal I ever had in the NBA, and we have this young guy on the team, Shammond Williams, come from North Carolina, good ball player, gym rat, stayed in the gym all the time, worked hard, good kid, just trying to find his way in the NBA, and me and him play on the same team on the second team. Brent Barry, Gary Payton on the first team. So we scrimmaging one day, and Gary, I guess he just woke up out the bed in a bad mood one day, and he just came in the gym, just we were scrimmaging, and he got the ball and he just bam, bust open Shammond's nose and mouth, and he was like this here, he was bleeding all through his fingers, and he was just bleeding, and I was like, and that triggered me. It made me. I was like, yo. I was like, man, why you do him? Do me like that. That's what I was saying. I was like, do me like that. And so, and he tell the coach, Westfall, oh, I got Vernon now. I said, I can't say what I said. I know I'm on this, but I said some things. I was like, man, if you touch me, I said, and you know, you got to touch somebody when you play basketball. You're going to touch somebody. So I was like, man, if you touch me, I said, I told the coach and the general manager and the owner was in the gym. I said, if he touch me, I'm finna whoop his. That's what I'm getting ready to do. And because of what he did to my young boy. And my young boy over there bleeding like crazy. And so I got the ball and I just drove. I broke the play and I just drove to the basket. He tripped me. And I got up and I just bop, bop, beep, bop, beep, bop, bop, and slung him around in front of the owner and general manager and just beat him up pretty good. Yeah, and then and that right there, here I go again, lose $6 million. They didn't bring me back for the other 2 years. So
You take a lot of financial losses over this. Dr. Melanie, give me the statistics with this. African American community, what do mental health statistics look like in general on this topic?
So it's interesting because and I will caveat this, is we don't really have wonderful metrics because of even just trying to assess it. So take this with a grain of salt. You do see higher rates of suicide attempts, particularly in Black males, than you do oftentimes white males. The biggest issue you're seeing is higher levels of parts of depression, so sadness, higher levels of anxiety that oftentimes get misdiagnosed as anger because of just how it's perceived oftentimes by mental health professionals or those working in the field. The ones that really scare me is you see things like lack of access. So lack of access to whether it's professional mental health providers, social service agents, I mean, a whole pastoral care across the board. You're seeing significantly tougher times, difficulty to access. And then you see, just on the statistics side, you also are seeing like just higher rates of trauma across the board, right? Higher rates of, again, single family homes, oftentimes because one of the parents might be incarcerated or just gone. You see higher rates of poverty, higher rates of community violence, gang violence, all these different things, which can then exacerbate these symptoms. The other piece you see in the African American community is a lot of symptoms that are more what we call somatoform physical symptoms. So where we traditionally and problematically in the clinical literature talk about depression as I'm sad or I'm crying, you actually see in the African American community a lot more like I'm physically in pain, or I have physiologic, my stomach hurts, or I'm actually unable, I get sick, which is depression or anxiety. We just misdiagnose it more frequently.
Can I go back to the access part, because I pulled up this article that I was reading earlier, and it caught my attention because I actually saw patterns that is playing out here in Erie. This is from the U.S. News, and it was somewhat dated. It goes back to March 1st, 2023. It says, study, Black people visit ER for mental health at highest rates. You said access, that jumped out at me, right? Because I don't have a therapist, a doctor, whomever, that I'm seeing for this on a regular basis. Even in Erie, I've been seeing this pattern of I'm having a mental health episode, and they'll check themselves in. I want to say Mill Creek Community is the one hospital that everybody seems to be going to. Yep. What is this pattern about?
So a lot of times it's not knowing or not having. Also, thing is not having mental health professionals who look like you. Right? There's a huge piece here where, although,
which is why my daughter went into this profession, as a matter of fact, because this pattern really bothered her. But
yeah. So you see, I think of the mental health professionals, it's like less than 5% are African American, which is just really problematic when you are trying to convince or find pathways for the African American community to seek help. And there are cultural barriers, even for people like myself, who is Caucasian and who is trying to understand, but I'm never going to know the experience. So having Black and brown therapists is so essential. So that's a lot of what we're doing locally, is try to attract Black and brown individuals into the profession, because then it makes a difference. So yeah, but the other thing too is you see decreased availability of healthcare, which makes access. ERs have to take everybody, and so sometimes people will go to the ERs because they know they'll get service, whereas some sort of service. Additionally, it's a lot more palatable sometimes for people to go to a medical. Go to the doctor, go to the ER, because it's a medical issue that's acceptable. Whereas going, as you said, going to talk about my feelings. Like that's anathema. That's not, people don't even talk about it, right? And you also do see more frequently Black and brown members of the community go to churches to also seek help, and some do phenomenally to just serve the Black and brown community, but other churches aren't familiar with or don't have the right training to be able to provide the right services. So we're working on it, but it is really challenging.
You talk about misdiagnosing something as anger sometimes, and that's one of the first things that I thought about. I was at a graduation not long ago, my own child's graduation, and the rule is you hold your applause until the end after everyone's name is called so we can cheer all at one time, which is fine. And of course, when Black folk children are running across the stage, go ahead, my man. And afterwards, we talked about it. I said, listen, now it was viewed by a lot of audience members as disrespect. I'm like, these are the same people culturally that are encouraged to speak out in church, the most sacred of sacred spaces. If you ain't talking back to the pastor, he thinks something's wrong.
Well, I also think there's something there where who are the people determining what is respectful and disrespectful? And historically, it's been, white men, right? And so, yeah, that's the rule, because that's who, for the longest time, were the people graduating. And now you have, thank goodness, more African American members of the community going to college, getting graduate degrees, working in professional fields. And of course it's going to change, because it should absolutely change.
And to bring this back to Vernon with the misdiagnosis, I can picture a therapist who does not look like Vernon. You're right. And hearing Vernon's story, he leaves, or what do you think is wrong? I think he's just angry. He's got to get rid of his anger, right? Talk about that, Vernon. I see you want to chime in on that.
I mean, as far as, I had to seek help. And I have people I can actually call if I feel that I'm in a bad place, a bad space, to help me out and stuff like that now. Because I know I don't want to go back to the old, I call him Mad Max. I don't want to go back to Mad Max. I want to be Glad Max.
I like that. From Mad Max to Glad. That sounds like what your memoir should be called. From Mad Max to Glad Max, the Vernon Maxwell story. You said the NBA had services, though. Did you?
No, back when I first came in, no services. I mean, now they got guys, and I think actually in the building with the guys and on the team. I mean, actually, I think Mike traveled with the guys on the planes and stuff like that. That helped those guys out a lot. But I think these guys, like with me, back when in college, and they was trying to give me a little help, and I was rejecting it because it was too embarrassing, for me to, like, I'm the man on the team, and for me to tell these boys, all my peers, my boys, hey man, I wouldn't talking about, my mental stage, man. Man, what the hell are you talking about? Mental stage, and they looked at me like I was crazy. I'm the man on the team, and
tough guy persona.
I'm supposed to go through nothing,
right?
I could deal with this, they just didn't have the. In college they did. They offered it to me, but I rejected it. And the NBA, I thought I had it all figured out, and I really didn't, because I was still, like I said, I was layering on still. It was still getting in stuff, and but I felt like just maybe about 2-3 years ago, I started, because I still was getting in stuff at my old age. I was like, I'll get mad in a heartbeat, and now, I'm trying to, know that I think I deal with it because I know a lot of people, I can hurt a lot of people by doing like crazy things like I used to do when I was a kid. And you know, I got older kids now, and so I got to be respectful for that. And so, but now I still, like I say, I struggle all the time. I mean, probably every day with my mental. And it's a right, yes, and I know, and I got ways I know how I can kind of help myself deal with it.
Vernon, can you talk to us about the Vernon Maxwell Initiative, and so which is a 501c3 that you started to address these issues, shine light on these issues. Talk about the genesis of that idea and what conversations or what feelings or what circumstances led to the birth of that idea and motivated you to just, I'm gonna make this thing a reality. How did that come to be?
Well, my personal assistant, Cam Carter, he came up, he was like, yo, man, it'll be a good thing for you, man, to get in a good space for you to get into, to talk about this mental health, man, because it's a good avenue where, you can talk about your problem, what you went through, and you probably can help other people and help some kids along the way, and let them know it's okay to ask for help. Like I've been saying the whole week, it's okay, man, to ask for help, man. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. Because that was my problem. I was too scared to talk to my teammates about, man, I got a little issues with myself, but the Vernon Maxwell Initiative, it's just about, self-awareness, about mental health, and it's something dear in my heart that I wanted to do, and I was scared to jump into this field, because I got to learn a lot more about this too. Yeah. I try to read through the week about it, so like Dr. Kennedy, I read his book, and he had some real good, interesting things to say about mental health, and so every day it's a learning curve for me, with this here, and I'm working at it hard, and I love what I'm doing. I'm passionate about what I'm doing about this issue. I really want to get this out and let everybody know, yeah, Vernon Maxwell, I'm that guy. Yeah, I got issues still today, with this, and I'm proud to talk about it.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we have people like Dr. Melanie on the show. When it comes to subjects like this, you don't want to misspeak, you don't want to make assumptions. This is a very nuanced and a very sensitive area and a sensitive field, and I get the sense of, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is probably one field where people get too many bootleg opinions and diagnoses as opposed to leaning on what's factual, clinical, or studied. Are you finding that?
Yeah, it's a struggle, right? Because we want to make sure that whatever we're doing is got evidence behind it, that we know through research that it's effective. Because particularly in the space where you're talking depression and anxiety and anger issues, if you don't know what you're doing, or we don't know it's effective, we can actually cause harm. So we got to really make sure that what we're doing is going to actually help people. Problem is, again, historically, the majority of research in mental health has been on white women specifically, and so we've had to work really hard in our field to broaden what is considered mental health intervention and prevention, and really broaden it. Could be various different. We're learning that there are various different ways, from medical medicines, biofeedback, cultural community interventions that are effective. We just haven't really gotten in and done enough research to say that they're effective. And so I love what you're doing and what people like you are doing to broaden and really get at the youth. I think that's really essential because, as you talked about in your own story, and we see this every day, if you can teach some of these regulation skills, and you can teach people around these kids how to relate, how to help these kids learn how to, deal with their behaviors and learn appropriate physiological regulation styles and change how they think about things, and then provide, the research really shows like one trusted adult who can provide a safe place for that kid is hugely beneficial. Right? Your Uncle Mike. And so if we can start building these blocks, and you teach a 6 or a 7 or a 9-year-old how to regulate themselves, it prevents so much later on. And so I love what you're doing, because long term, it'll be so impactful.
And I think that's like what you were saying. I think and that's great, because if you catch it at a young age, then you kind of can horn them in a little bit. It won't get it so out of control as it, like you said, steamrolling over. You know, so that's why I think it's real important to talk to these kids about it, and then let them know that, hey man, it's okay if your friend laughing at you because you're saying that you need some help. It's okay, man. Just ask for some help, man. You heard what I told them today at the school. I said, man, if anybody in here wants my number and you need to talk to somebody and you need some help, I don't even give my number out to people. But I would have gave my number out to them kids. I mean, I'd have gave my number out. If they want to talk, because I knew they was calling me for a reason. They had something to say. So, I mean, it's real big, but I think it's big to catch them at a young age, so it don't, like what happened to me.
I think it's really also important to have role models who can talk about this in a way, because, you know, if you look at the statistics, 84% of people, this is across all different demographic groups, have experienced trauma. I think it's like 64% have experienced more than one, and those rates are higher in the African American community. And so the more we can talk about that, you're not alone in this. If you look at the majority of people, we've all experienced trauma, and members of the African American community, particularly historical trauma, 2, 3, 4 things is easy, like without a doubt. And so if we can talk about it openly, then it keeps that silence piece that you're talking about. It takes it out of the equation. So kids are a little bit more comfortable talking about things, and therefore maybe the teacher or the coach or the parent or the uncle can hear about it and even just have a conversation about it early enough that things can happen. And it may not need full-on mental health treatment. Maybe it's, you know, you're an athlete, and athletics is one of those ways, you know, particularly in kids when they have a lot of energy and a lot of emotions that comes physiologically, and athletics is one of those ways that those kids can learn to regulate themselves. I'm gonna go out and play my kid does that all the time. I'm upset, I'm gonna go out and play basketball for 20 minutes or volleyball because that will regulate me. So just, it's amazingly helpful to be the model so these kids can see that too.
I think the thing that's so insidious and so sneaky about this is that African Americans have used this as a defense mechanism for so long out of complete necessity. If you go back to, and I know people roll their eyes a little bit and start talking about slavery and things along those lines, but in a legitimate sense. So you have a male slave being punished or flogged or whipped publicly. Now, Massa was very, very slick. Bring out mom, bring the kids, especially the boys. You are mandated to watch this. And what did the motherly instinct do? The motherly instinct would say, don't you sass master, right? If you're upset, if you're mad about what you're seeing, what you're feeling, what you're going through, you better not say it. You better deal with it and keep it moving. It was a survival mechanism. Through slavery, through Jim Crow, through civil rights, they had to suppress these feelings.
And I would even say through, and it's still happening now, I'm hoping it's changing, but even early on, and if you look in athletics, particularly basketball, that was one of the few places African American men can be shown to be successful and a role model, but only in this very slim way, and you can't get out of that, and because if you do, then all of a sudden, you know, you're almost a figure, not a person, and you see that throughout, you know, particularly in athletics.
Mm-hmm. And you compare and contrast that, and I'm not trying to be facetious, but this is actual. In hockey, which is permeated by white males, you guys are angry. Go on and get it out of your system. We'll stand back and
get it out
of your system.
Somebody hit the ground and it's over.
And is that your tooth over there? Get it, pick it up, and let's mop up the blood and let's. Right. And it sounds silly, but even now, you will allow grown men space. Yeah, you will allow them space to have it out. Go on and get it out of there. You good? And with the African American athlete, especially the black male athlete, you act like you got an attitude. Tech.
Get your money. We're gonna go to your wallet. We're gonna get your wallet.
Yeah. More attitude. He's out of here. We're gonna take your money. He's out of here. He's being too aggressive. Well, you let them. You let them. So let's go back to the initiative as we head toward the finish line. Is there an overarching goal, or is there something that you want to see as a primary outcome of this initiative? And so we always talk about our mission and our vision with nonprofits. What's the mission? What's the vision? And the vision is I'd like to see a world where X is the norm because of the work that we're doing. What do you want to overall accomplish through the Vernon Maxwell Initiative?
Just basically, man, being able where I can we've been trying to set up an avenue where we can have a phone line where we could just set up where anybody can call if you just need some help. That's what we're trying to work on doing, where we can open up doors like that. You can just call in, and we don't even have to know, who you are. Just call in, and we're trying to do some stuff like that. That's what I'm really trying to. That's one thing I'm really big on right there, because I think that's real important, just to have a number that you can call and just talk to somebody about your issues or what's going on with you. That's what me and Cam been trying to work on, and we're working on that right now. But that's the main thing for me, really, what I want to do. I want to try to just have somewhere so somebody can call somebody and talk to if you need it.
Have you been writing any of these experiences down? I don't know if you utilize journaling at all in all of these years. Is there some kind of written journaling of your experiences?
No, not really. I keep it all up at, it's so genuine, I just don't have to write it. It's all embedded in me. I already, so yeah, but I think I need to probably do a little bit more jotting down my thoughts and the way and of different. I should do it, but I don't do it enough. But I keep everything, so like that.
Yeah, because this one, it feels like the book that a lot of kids need to read. All right, and two, it feels like the movie that a lot of kids need to watch and need to see. I'm serious. Even under I look at what different subject. You different feel altogether. But what the movie Rudy did to accentuate the fact that keep trying even when you are not the best, when you're not ranked #1 in the state of Florida. That kid, listen, there's still a success story for you, the underdog. And Rudy's a classic movie now because of that. Well, I feel like this is something that every kid needs to see or read, because it just feels like it applies to too many young black male athletes.
I've heard not exactly the same, but the same sort of similar themes I've heard in so many different stories. And I think, particularly, and I've talked to Bishop Rock frequently about the kids at Eagles Nest at his place, about all these kids wanting to be athletes. And I think they would so much benefit from hearing your story, to give them some advice about how can they work now to not only be, successful if that's where they want to go and they have the talent, but also how do they set themselves up for success socially, emotionally, all of those types of things. I totally could see them really enjoying and needing something like that.
And so, as we close, any parting shots for the audience, for the listeners of this show, anything you want people to keep in mind as we get to the end of the show today? We thank you for coming on. First of all, anything you want people to keep in mind?
No, not really. Just, stay nice, be nice. Just stay blessed. That's it.
And that's Glad Max speaking, not Mad
That's
Max.
it. That's
We're
right.
starting to learn the difference here.
Yeah.
And so, again, I just want to remind everybody that July is National Minority Mental Health Awareness Month. And although there's a particular month dedicated to this, certainly as Vernon is doing and with this initiative, this is something that we want to shine the light on throughout the year. I know that Dr. Melanie, you're involved with the BIPOC Coalition. Your organization you're involved with, what is it exactly?
So a couple different ones. The Erie Coalition for a Trauma-Informed Community, where we do a lot of training in the school districts to really help school districts become places where teachers and the organizations are prepared to help kids not only learn math and science and English, but also how to help them regulate so that kids don't fall through the cracks. And I know the BIPOC Coalition, which is really helping to grow resources and interventions for Black and Brown people in the community who need mental health services and prevention efforts.
And I tell you that these kids suffer in so many ways, this just being one of them. And at the end of the day, if you are concerned about the welfare and the well-being of our kids physically, mentally, or otherwise, this is how you do it. You get involved. You roll your sleeves up and say, what's my contribution? And Vernon, you have found a very unique pathway where you can make an impact in this particular area. So God bless your work, brother. We appreciate it. And thank you so much for coming on the show just to talk about it. We know that it's personal and it's difficult to talk about, but that unto itself is setting an example Fight through it. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. So that's it for our show today. You can tune in next time for more discussion and analysis with local and national guests. I want you to remember that Next 2.0 streams on Fridays on all major podcast platforms and on the fourth Sunday of the month at 4 p.m. on WQLM PBS NPR, which is 91.3 FM. You can also leave a message or a comment or a text message about the show, upcoming shows, or ideas, your thoughts on our guests. Today, you can call that hotline at 814-240-8816, 814-240-8816. We look forward to hearing from you soon. I'm Marcus Atkinson. Come and join us again so that you can hear more about what's next for our communities and our democracy. Peace.